Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out today. Before we begin, I'd just like to acknowledge a few people. We've got the board chair, Joe Bessignol. Thank you for coming out. David Kehoan, the superintendent. Rhonda Nixon, the assistant superintendent. And Cheryl LaBuick, the principal of the school, is here as well. So thank you, everyone, for coming out. And, of course, thank you for having us. We are so excited to be here. As you can see, St. Cateri Tekakwitha is very close to being completed. I'm proud to say that the kids of Morinville are going to be attending school here in September, so it's very exciting. But you know what else is exciting is there is a myth about infrastructure. People think that you could be fiscally conservative or you could build infrastructure, but you can't do both. And we're here to prove that you can absolutely do both. We're going to spend more money per capita than other provinces on infrastructure. We have hundreds of projects like this around the province that are in the concept, design, construction phase. And we're very thrilled to be here. And someone who'd like to tell you a little bit more about it is our Premier, Jason Kenney.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dale, for welcoming us to your constituency up here in Morinville, Mayor Turner, and to folks from the local community, especially to the people who are working on completing this new school, St. Cateri Tekakwitha Catholic School up here in Morinville, which is an historic Alberta community. Of course, Indigenous people formed communities in this part of Alberta going back thousands of years. But Morinville itself is home to Alberta's oldest Francophone, one of its oldest Francophone communities that was pioneered by Oblate missionaries back in the mid-1800s. So it's fitting that we are gathered here today on the construction site of the future St. Cateri Tekakwitha School. She was North America's first Indigenous saint, beatified by Pope Benedict back in 2012. St. Cateri was a Mohawk Algonquin woman who lived in what is now Quebec back in the 1600s. And by all accounts, she was an extraordinarily courageous woman and whose short life was scarred by war, disease, and the death of her parents as a young child. In the Mohawk language, her name, Tekakwitha, means to put in good order. And just as her story inspires so many as the patron saint of the Indigenous peoples of North America, her name speaks to our purpose here today to put Alberta in good order. I am very happy today to announce that through the Government of Alberta's Blueprint for Jobs, taxpayers will invest $19.3 billion in new capital projects to build infrastructure over the next 3 years. This is a historic investment, and along with schools like St. Cateri's, we will build roads, hospitals, courthouses, long-term care facilities, fish hatcheries, universities, museums, dams, and more. We're building the infrastructure that Alberta will need to fuel future economic growth and make life better for Albertans. Roads to help get folks to work, to ship our goods to markets around Canada, around the world. Schools to help educate future generations with the knowledge and skills that they need to succeed. Hospitals to care for the sick and the injured. Courts to keep our streets and communities safe. This investment by taxpayers of more than $6.4 billion tax dollars a year will help to create jobs for thousands of Albertans in architecture, engineering, construction, skilled trades, and many other fields in every corner of the province, of course, with spin-off benefits right through the economy. These will be good, high-paying jobs that provide people from all different walks of life with the dignity of work and the opportunity to take care of their families. This commitment to upgrading and expanding Alberta's public infrastructure is a key part of Alberta's overall blueprint for jobs and growth. In the short term, it will stimulate job creation because unemployment remains far too high, and too many Albertans are still suffering. In the long term, it will provide the sturdy foundations for future economic growth. Our government is obsessed with getting Alberta back to work. Many of the jobs created through the capital plan that we're announcing here today will be in the skilled trades, which we value so much. So I'm happy to see groups here like Careers, the Next Generation, and CLAC, as well as Merit Contractors. These groups and others are doing tremendous work to highlight the importance of tradespeople, encouraging young Albertans to enter the trades, which our government is doing through our Skills for Jobs initiative. Infrastructure Minister Prasad Panda will be rolling out our capital plan over the coming weeks, highlighting important infrastructure projects all around the province. Prasad spent, his whole career before he got into the legislature as a major projects engineer building massive projects, so he knows what he's doing, and we know he's going to get this done right. In addition to new needed infrastructure, we'll continue supporting in-train projects like the Edmonton Misericordia Hospital, the Calgary Cancer Centre, the Grand Prairie Hospital, which we're going to get done this year, right?
Absolutely.
And as well as many projects covered under the local government fiscal framework. Taxpayers, through this Blueprint for Jobs, will be investing $5.6 billion in direct municipal support, $2.7 billion for capital maintenance and renewal of public infrastructure, $2.5 billion for health facilities, $2.3 billion for roads and bridges, $1.5 billion for schools, $350 million for family social supports and housing, and $288 million for post-secondary infrastructure. Over and above what was announced in the last budget, the 2020 capital plan provides for new projects worth an estimated $772 million over the next 3 years. These projects will create about 3,000 jobs by the year 2022. Those are just the direct jobs. So our government was elected last year to put Alberta in good order, to get our fiscal house in order, to get pipelines built, and get a fair deal for Alberta within the Federation, and to do everything we can to create jobs and bring investment back here. That includes investment in public infrastructure. So I'd like to thank everybody here today. Thank you, Minister Nally, for hosting us in your beautiful constituency. Thanks, Prasad, for your hard work on the capital plan. And thank you in advance to all of the hardworking women and men of this province who, through their tax dollars, will help to build the future of Alberta through this infrastructure. And thanks, most importantly, here to the folks behind me who are literally building this school, and which will provide first-rate education for generations of kids here in Morinville. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Premier. I can't wait for the grand opening in September, and I hope you're able to come out and join us, because that would be wonderful to have you there for that as well. Would be awesome. I would like to introduce you to my favorite minister, and I'm not just saying that because he's the infrastructure minister, but Minister Panda.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister Nally, for that introduction. Thank you, Premier, for taking time to join us here in this beautiful town of Morinville. I was just here in Morinville a couple of weeks ago to celebrate the opening of the Four Winds Public School. And today we find ourselves at St. Kateri's, another school for the people of Morinville. Because Morinville has grown by nearly 50% the last 10 years, and that kind of growth puts enormous strain on our existing infrastructure and requires action on the part of the government to address the needs of a growing community. Last week, our government introduced Budget 2020, which reinforces the government's commitment to growing the province's economy and creating jobs for Albertans. And one way we are doing this is through our capital plan, which Premier said just now, will invest $19.3 billion over the 3 years. Actually, for 4 years, it was $24.2 billion, and last year we kept our commitment, and now this year and the coming 2 years, we are going to invest $19.3 billion. And over the next 3 years, our capital plan will continue to support key infrastructure projects throughout the province by investing. Some of this may be repetition, but if you believe our opposition, we should be blowing hospitals, closing schools, but that's not what we are doing. I'm not the Minister of Destruction, but I'm the Minister of Construction. So $5.6 billion for direct municipal support and $2.7 billion for capital maintenance and renewal of public infrastructure, and $2.5 billion for health facilities, and $2.3 billion for roads and bridges, $1.5 billion for schools, and $353 million for family social supports and housing, and $288 million for post-secondary infrastructure. And our Premier was also kind enough to tell us to advance if there are any other projects that we can move up in the capital plan that would create economic conditions for the job creators in Alberta. And we know that building, renewing, and modernizing our public infrastructure, like health facilities, schools, roads, and affordable housing, boosts our economy by supporting thousands of jobs for Albertans. And the Premier has it exactly right. This investment will support jobs for thousands of Albertans in architecture, engineering, construction, skilled trades, and many fields in every corner of our province. In fact, by 2022, more than 3,000 new jobs will be supported from the new projects we have provided for in the Capital Plan 2020, valued at about $772 million over the 3 years. Some of these new infrastructure projects include renovations of the Peter Lougheed Center in Calgary, construction of a hospital in Red Deer, and modernization of the Glenbow Museum in Calgary, and two new schools, and also construction funds for 9 school projects previously approved for design only, and funding commitments to move forward with the Bow Reservoir Options projects for the Red Deer Integrated Emergency Shelter. As Minister of Infrastructure, I'm proud to lead our government's efforts to deliver on the capital plan. Working closely with partner ministers and stakeholders, my ministry ensures the health, school, and government facilities provided through the capital plan are built and maintained in a cost-effective and efficient manner. These are the facilities that are necessary to support the delivery of government programs and services for Albertans, including health facilities such as the Calgary Cancer Center, the Foothills Medical Center Power Plant, also in Calgary, and the Grand Prairie Regional Hospital. Finally, we are getting that done this summer. And it's also a priority of our government to ensure the Alberta students, families, and communities have access to the new and modernized school facilities they need. Through the capital plan, we are investing $1.5 billion into school infrastructure like this. This will ensure that over the next few years, thousands of Alberta students will benefit from about the 90 school projects that are in planning, 90. They are in different stages of planning, design, or under construction throughout the province. In fact, by the end of 2020, we expect 24 of these projects to be complete and ready to meet the needs of Alberta students, families, and communities for many years. So this year, we are completing 24 schools. And from light rail transit to ring roads, highways to bridges, affordable housing to continuing care, to schools, museums, hospitals, and courthouses, Government's 2020 capital plan maintains spending on fiscally responsible infrastructure projects. With a focus on infrastructure that advances jobs and economic growth, we remain committed to growing the province's economy and creating jobs for Albertans by supporting the infrastructure that families and communities need. And I look forward to a busy and productive year. Yes, Minister, we'll be back here to open your other school. Good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Panda. As the Minister of Construction, since that's your new title, you're welcome to Morinville, St. Albert at any time. Okay? I'd like to turn it over to Christine, who is going to moderate your questions now.
Just a reminder, we have a mic to your left, so if you want to step up and take it from here. Anyone?
Good morning. Mr. Premier, just sorry, a bit off topic, but yesterday Alberta identified its first presumptive case of COVID-19. We heard from doctors just before that they didn't feel prepared for it. I guess what is being done and what can be done and what more will be done by the province to ensure medical staff are prepared for what almost inevitably will be more cases in Alberta?
Well, obviously we take this very seriously, and Dr. Hinshaw, Alberta's Chief Medical Officer, has assured us that Alberta is well prepared. The government and Alberta Health Services, the Alberta Emergency Management Agency have all been preparing for this since COVID-19 first appeared in China back in January. I understand AHS has increased its communication directly with frontline physicians about measures that should be taken. The advice to the public is very clear. First of all, if anyone in this province was aboard that Grand Princess cruise that had a number of infections, we asked them immediately to call 811 and to report that fact and to self-isolate themselves for 14 days. We asked the public to say the best way to prepare themselves or to prevent contamination from this or other kinds of viruses is good hygiene, including, for example, staying home if they are sick, covering their mouth with their arm if they're sneezing, washing their hands frequently with hot water and soap, and not going immediately to a hospital or clinic if they think they're exhibiting COVID-19 symptoms. Instead, they should call 811 and ask for assistance. The 811 HealthLink line is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So obviously we are concerned about this initial presumptive case. I think it was, given the breadth of this virus around the world, likely inevitable that we would see some manifestation of it here in Alberta. But again, we are assured by our world-leading public health officials and emergency response officials that Alberta is well prepared for this.
And for our bilingual friends in French too, thanks.
I'm going to do that at the end if you don't mind. And I will do that. I didn't know CTV had a French station now. Okay, well, we'll get to you. All right.
Fletcher?
Premier, somewhat related to this, job numbers came out today, had some increases in Alberta, a lot of them in part-time. How satisfied are you with what we saw this morning?
Not at all satisfied. It was good to see a net creation of 11,000 full-time jobs in Alberta reported by Statistics Canada for February, but there are still way too many Albertans out of work, and we're not going to celebrate until we have seen a massive turnaround in terms of our economy. From month to month, the unemployment numbers are going to go up and down. The key thing is that we do everything we can in policy to create the right conditions for job creation. We're doing that in part through these record public investments in infrastructure. We're doing it with the job creation tax cut, with the red tape reduction initiative, and we'll be making some announcements later this month about strategic investments that will both give a huge boost to our energy sector, but also create good construction jobs here in Alberta. So we're doing everything we can to get the right conditions, but I think we need to be, I think all Albertans see what's going on with the global economy because of the coronavirus. Markets are going down again today. The price for Western Canadian Select crude oil is trading just over $30 a barrel right now. And we don't know how long this will go on. But it does appear, based on all evidence right now, that there is a significant global economic downturn beginning right now. We surely hope that it will be brief and that the virus is contained and starts to diminish in terms of the number of people affected. We hope confidence will restore to markets and growth will return to the global economy. But we Albertans are not an island. It is frustrating. It is frustrating after 5 years of economic decline and stagnation. And just as I think we've been ready to see significant growth in 2020, to see this global downturn from the coronavirus. The Conference Board of Canada, a week ago today, projected that Alberta would be the second fastest growing provincial economy in Canada at 2.2% GDP growth in 2020 and 2.3% growth next year. But obviously, those projections are now in question until we know how bad and severe this global downturn is.
And on quite a different topic, the time change is coming up this week, and I know your government was looking into what might possibly change. Any more thoughts now that we're leading up to that about what should happen or what you'd like to see happen?
Sure. So I understand about 90% of the Albertans who participated in our consultation said that they wanted to stop changing time zones and just stick with one time on the clock all year long. So we hear those Albertans. We're completing a few more consultations with key industries like the aviation industry. But I do note that British Columbia has gone in that direction on the west side of Alberta, and Saskatchewan has always stayed with 1 clock on the east side. Yukon just announced they're going to stick with 1 clock year-round. I understand California is going in that direction, and possibly the other Northwest states. So I think it's becoming more and more obvious that our whole region in North America is shifting in that direction. I personally support the idea, but we're going to complete our consultations before making a final decision.
Okay, we'll take a couple questions from the phone. Operator, can you please put through the first caller?
That first question is from Chris Epp with CTV Calgary. Chris, your line is open.
Premier, the budget last week was contingent on $58 a barrel for oil this year. I think it was around 47 last week during the budget. It's now at, I think, 42 today.
That's WTI. Yeah.
It's WTI. What will the effect be on that long term?
Well, we don't know what the long-term effect will be. We do know in the short term it's going to have a negative impact on our budget and on our economy. On an annualized basis, every dollar reduction in the price of West Texas Intermediate oil takes about $200 million off of provincial revenues. We just don't know how long this situation is going to prevail. Now, we started the year with pretty strong prices at about, I think, averaging about $65 WTI in January, which is one of the reasons that we projected the deficit for fiscal year 2019-2020 would be about $1.2 billion lower than initially projected. It's clear now that we're going to be that number will be losing some of those gains that we had in the fourth quarter of 2019 and in January of this year. But look, we just don't know how long and how deep this global trough is going to be. As Minister Toews has said, all we can do is manage what is within our control. And this is why it's particularly important that we continue on the path of fiscal responsibility. While we are making record investments in many areas, including today capital spending for infrastructure that helps to create jobs, while we're spending more than Alberta ever has on things like healthcare and education, including, by the way, physician compensation, we are reducing overall government of Alberta spending by 2.8% over 4 years. And this just underscores the importance of getting our fiscal house in order, because if indeed we do end up in a prolonged global downturn, that deficit will go back up, and we need to be prepared for the future. So our government will do what is necessary to give the best possible policies for growth and to dampen the impact of any potential global recession.
Do you have a follow-up, Chris?
Just as a quick follow-up, sir, if I may. I know the finance minister said last week that if things changed, he was prepared to modify those numbers, cut deeper. I guess at what point do you make that decision and start implementing, whether it's deeper reductions or cuts?
Well, typically in a situation like this, we would reassess the fiscal plan about midway through the year, particularly if there's been real volatility in the economy. There is no point in us making significant changes to fiscal policy right now when nobody knows how long or how deep the impact of the coronavirus downturn will be. We're going to have to assess that. I do note that there has been some stimulative action on monetary policy with both the U.S. Federal Reserve and the Bank of Canada lowering their basic rate by 0.5 percentage point, and that is countercyclical. And frankly, what we are announcing today with record investments in capital infrastructure spending is countercyclical. So we're going to have we'll monitor the situation very closely. We'll make, if we need to modify the course, it would likely be in a few months' time.
Operator, can you please put through the next caller?
Next question is from James Keller with the Globe and Mail. James, your line is open.
So a bit more on that, looking at the long term, and it's not even that long term, we're talking 2 years before there was a plan to balance the budget. How committed are you to definitely balancing the budget in 22-23 no matter what, or would your government entertain delaying that if oil prices don't recover, or even if they just don't recover enough?
Well, James, I've always said that this is our strong commitment to Albertans. However, if there is a major prolonged global downturn, that would obviously affect our plan to get to balance in that time frame. So that's what we've always said. And indeed, if you go and look at the budget that we published last week, we offer different scenarios, including a bearish scenario where there is a major global economic downturn and a scenario where we don't get a pipeline built. In both of those scenarios, they would have a big impact on Alberta's finances. That's no secret. That's why, quite frankly, it's unfortunate that governments in recent years were not fiscally responsible, because they drove us into, and this is governments of different stripes, I'm not pointing fingers at one party, but they drove us into a $70 billion debt today, where we are less well prepared to cope with a major global downturn. I don't want to make that same mistake in the future.
James, do you have a follow-up?
I know that over the course of the next, over the next couple of years, I think we're still reducing our reliance on oil revenue, but it still does represent a major slice of the pie. So how sort of dependent are we still on the royalty roller coaster, and how much of a concern is that to you?
Well, we're less dependent than we used to be. Royalty revenue has declined as an overall share of Alberta's revenues in recent years, as you know. Having said that, it affects our whole economy, James. I think you understand that. Whether it's folks that operate hotels and restaurants in the service sector, or construction contractors, or all through our economy, our high-tech sector, the real estate market, it's all affected by the energy sector in a province where that is still about 20% of our GDP. And so it's not just a question of sensitivity to royalty revenues. I will say I saw an editorial in your newspaper yesterday suggesting that Alberta should raise taxes to deal with these fiscal challenges. And it said that if Alberta had the same average level of taxation as other provinces, we wouldn't have a deficit. Here's the truth. If we were to raise taxes significantly in the middle of a downturn, we would be putting people out of work and punishing families that are already struggling to get by. It is also true, as Dr. McKinnon's panel pointed out, that we have a spending problem. And if we were to be spending at the Canadian average for provincial governments, we would have a $3 billion surplus rather than a $7 billion deficit. So I say that before anybody talks about punishing hardworking Alberta families with big tax hikes, we should focus on the government operating within the means of taxpayers, that Alberta should become, over time, at least as efficient as BC, Ontario, and Quebec. And so that's our plan over the years to come.
Come back to the floor. Go ahead.
Premier, yesterday you issued your endorsement of Aaron O'Toole in written form. Just for the folks at home, in your own words, why him over Peter MacKay?
Well, actually, his campaign will be publishing a video today that I did with Aaron, who visited us in Edmonton. I've known Aaron for 15 years, a good friend of mine. He was an officer in the Royal Canadian Air Force, as was my dad. He was Veterans Affairs Minister when I was National Defence Minister. We worked really closely together to close the gaps between those two departments, and I saw how competent he is. So basically, I believe Aaron is a very capable, competent, intelligent, principled man who understands the importance of a big tent coalition reaching out, including to new Canadians. He is the only first-tier candidate who speaks French. and who I can win, I believe, especially in areas like suburban Ontario, which is where Mr. Trudeau won his minority government last year. So I believe he's the candidate who's most likely to win. I think he's principled. I think he's a team player. And I think he'd be a very solid leader and you know, I make no bones about this. Last year, I said I would do whatever I could to see a change in the federal government. We did that our part here in Alberta, but we need to see a change in Ontario, and I think Aaron is best equipped to do that.
Do you have a follow-up?
One of the criticisms on Mr. O'Toole's candidacy from certain corners is that the Take Back Canada slogan is a bit of a dog whistle. What's your interpretation of that?
I think it's pretty explicit. He is very clear that he wants to fight for working women and men who have lost their jobs by government policies that have resulted in the flight of tens of billions of dollars of investment, closure of auto plants in Ontario, pipelines in the West, forestry projects in British Columbia, with anti-growth policies. And I agree with him. We need a common sense government that is going to bring respect for the rule of law, regulatory certainty, the ability to get big things done, to focus on working women and men, and not just the fashionable political concerns of downtown elites in places like Toronto.
All right, let's do the COVID-19 response in French, and we'll wrap it up.
Okay. This will be challenging because it's a specialized vocabulary. Mais, okay. Hier, évidemment, le docteur I'll try this again. Hier, le docteur Hinshaw, l'officier principal médical de l'Alberta, a annoncé qu'on a vécu le premier cas d'une infection présumée d'une Albertaine avec le coronavirus. Évidemment, ça nous inquiète, mais le docteur Hinshaw et les officiels de l'agence d'urgence de l'Alberta et de santé publique nous informent que l'Alberta est bien préparée pour les autres cas de l'infection de coronavirus. Nous exigeons que les Albertains suivent les règles de santé personnelle, comme laver les mains et rester chez vous si vous êtes malade, si vous avez une indication que peut-être vous avez le coronavirus, il faut appeler 811 pour consulter un professionnel et particulièrement nous exigeons que les Albertains qui étaient à bord le Grand Princess Cruise Line notifier dès que possible les officiels de santé publique à HealthLink 811. Et enfin, évidemment, cette situation à l'échelle globale a un effet grave sur l'économie mondiale, y compris l'économie de l'Alberta, et notre gouvernement se prépare à répondre à ce développement-là.
We're done.
Sorry, that was my best effort. Okay, I wasn't ready for that one. And kudos to CTV for doing a solid for Radio Can there. All right. Thanks again to the mayor and the contractors and all you guys. I'm sorry for causing you guys to slow down work here. You're going to make up for it, though, right? Get her done on time and on budget? Is that the plan?
Some school board guys.
All right, and we got some school board. We have, what's the name of the school board up here?
St. Albert Catholic.
St. Albert. But it's not even called Catholic because you're actually the public board in St. Albert, right? Oh, you guys flipped the names. All right. Well, great. It looks like a beautiful school, and we wish you well in getting this done. All right, thank you. Why don't we take a quick picture over here?